Yo, what's good? What's good? Welcome, welcome. Did you miss me? We're back in the house tonight. I'm so glad to see you. Listen, we've been gone for a long time, but listen, we on that good time tonight. Welcome. This is the hottest and the greatest podcast on your social media platform. It's that time again for the Black and the Bold podcast. We got some hot stuff for you, hot off the press. As you can tell, I'm hyped up. I fought COVID and fought a whole lot of stuff. But listen, we're back in the building, and I'm glad to be here. Listen, tonight you're going to hear some thought-provoking, gut-wrenching, and sometimes, yes, some tear-jerking content that you just can't get enough of. But listen, we're going to get this thing started off right. I'm the Bold, but we got to do it in order. How you doing, Brother Black? What's going on with you, my brother?
You know how we do, bro. Hey, it's the black on this side and of the black and the bold. Like you say, the most happening thing going on at 8:30 tonight on August 2nd. So you definitely want to tune in for this one. This is obviously Dwayne Johnson, as you can see on the screen, and we are going to get into some fabulous conversation tonight. If you haven't even seen the title card, we're going to get into that. Is our ego in the way? So, bro, I'm ready to get started rolling. Other than that, as far as how it's been going on my end versus your end, it's status quo, man. Just running the business, continuously investing, stocks, doing that thing up and down, but just keep plugging away at it just so we can get those gains in the future. So basically, that's what it is on my side, man. We've got a lot of things going on right now with the school starting to get back in. Tomorrow is open house for a couple of our kids. And then, as you know, we've got kids in elementary, middle school, and high school. So it's always a juggling act on our end of the table. And not only that, but we are back into it, bro. We had a month break in the month of July when it came to track as it comes to athletics in our household. Kendall and Kalel finished out their AAU competitions out there. Needless to say, they both qualified for Junior Olympics. We sat that out just because we had already gone to Adidas Nationals for her high-profile event. So rather than coming up, we basically shameless. And so as that one rounded out, like I said, we took the break in July, and then they are back at it again, bro. Back at it again. It's cross-country season now, so we about to put the ones and twos, Kendall and Kalel, in the ring again, and see how they do. And as you know, they already lighting it up on practice and leading the pack. That's just how we do on this side of the county, bro. So that's really it, man. Outside of that, the little one is accepted to the gifted program at Pine Grove Middle. So we're excited about that. You know, when you're talking about the balance with education and athletics, I'm going to definitely pump both of these areas as far as our kids go, because we need to always see in our culture that our kids are excelling, not only in athletics, but in the room of the classes as well. So big ups to our kids on this side, man, because we're looking for big things on both sides of the field and off the field. So how's it going with you all? Hey, Suzette, how's it going?
Uh-oh, she in the building. She came in.
Whoa, hopped on in there.
She showed up tonight. What's going on, Sister Beautiful? How you doing? Popping in. What's going on? You muted.
Muted. Not yet.
She's somewhere in the dungeon in somebody's hospital. Somewhere down there. Somewhere in the airliners. The airliners.
Hey, well, just pop in when you can. Go ahead, Black. Bold. Get it going with what's been going on, man. Definitely interject when you get a chance, Suzette.
All right. Hey, man, everything's going good. Like I said, man, we're back at it. We had a couple weeks off, had a lot of things going on, but we're back at it again. Had an opportunity, man, to jump in and actually partnering up with another business. It's called Juice It. We got an all-natural organic juice business. We're just getting off, and man, listen, me and my fiance, my partner, so we're just getting this thing moving, and I'm excited about it. We're trying to make some moves with this thing, so if you want to change your life, if you want some consultations, you know what I'm saying, holla at your boy. We already making connections in the city. It's already blowing up in Valdosta and Jacksonville. So listen, God is good, man. So I'm just happy for everything running the way it's running. Kids are doing well, getting ready for school this year on in the school system now. So I kind of kicked one. You know, we got one out of the school system. Now we got
That's
one more
right.
to go. So,
You got a grown man, right?
yeah, man, he looked wrong. He 18, but he looked 30. What it said on what was that?
Shout out to Bad Boys 2, Will Smith,
Yeah,
Martin Lawrence.
he looked 30. He looked at least 30. But yeah, man, everything's going good, man. I'm just excited to be back, healthy. Just grateful for life, you know, health and strength, man. I'm just excited for it all. We like again, we definitely got some good content tonight, man. I've been looking at this. I've been chomping at the bit, ready to have this conversation. I think it's needed. I got my red lights on. Because we're in the red light district, not what you think. We're on a different time tonight. I want to speak directly to our folk tonight, ask some real questions because we need some real answers. Absolutely. But before we get started, shout out to everybody that's already been tagged, everybody that may be watching on YouTube or on Facebook. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Go ahead and hit the like, the share, and the subscribe button. Listen, you wouldn't be here already if you didn't know it was going to be fire conversation. So go ahead and let your friends know, let your family know. Black in the Bowl got something to say. And when the beautiful come on, I know she going to pull all her queens out. She going to holler at all her queens. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
There we go. What's going on, beautiful?
Yeah. Nothing. That's been way through the summer, you know. And back, some of the kids are going back at the end of the week, and some are going back at the beginning of next week. I too only have one more child in the education. I have an upcoming senior, so I'm excited.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna take all the congrats, although it's, you know, it's hard to get to the point where she is now. So I'm just excited to see her transition and, you know, phase of her life. That's always an exciting time. So I'm looking forward to your host for us. But yeah, I'm sorry, you know, I miss my Black in the Bowl fan. I had to make sure I pop in tonight at least for a little while to see what you guys are behaving. Make sure my queens are doing well and in good health.
You know we're gonna take care of them. You know it.
I'm just glad to be here. Yeah, so let's get it popping. You know what I'm saying? It's our ego. I really want to.
Hey, let me jump in real quick on this. I want to give definitely a quick shout out. Calvin Berrien just shared. I mean, he is popping off the chain already. He just shared tonight's live stream on Facebook. So I just want to give a shout out to the best friend of Lowndes County High School Vikings alumni, Calvin Berrien, longtime associate. So shout out to him, bro. Appreciate it.
Shout out CB. Oh boy, listen. Now, a lot of people don't know how far back we go with CB, man. We've been down with CB since what? Elementary school, middle school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a long time, man. CB, we've been tight for a long time. So that's a real friendship. That's one of the real brothers right there. So shout out to our truck drivers. Appreciate you, man, for logging on. Appreciate y'all your support too. Yeah, man, we're gonna jump right into the conversation. Absolutely gonna do that. You all seen the title. You all seen the thumbnail. I'm sure all of y'all have probably watched the interview from the Pivot Podcast. And Kevin Hart had something to say about, you know, Black America and our ego. I don't know if we're gonna play a clip of it or not, or the audio or not. But he had a lot to say, and I think it'll be a good thing for us to start out just by asking the simple question: do we have an ego problem in our community? I don't know. I'm not gonna be the first one to respond. I'm gonna throw the question out there, and then of course I'm gonna throw water on the fire. So I mean, beautiful. While we got you in, do you think that Black America has an ego problem?
Well, yes. The short answer is yes. I areas. Um, but yes, the short answer is I think it doesn't come without justification. I think it do have ego, but it can be kind of disguised as it just kind of depends on what your perspective is. But I think that we come a little bit closer to take a reality check that we're venturing off in, where our ego might be a little, inflated. So I think we are. We are.
All right, brother Black. What do you think? Is our ego in the way, bro? Do you think that we're suffering from an overinflated ego, or you think it's something else?
Well, because I can come at different angles on it, do me a favor though, as I'm bringing up the clip and locating the timeline of it. No, I have the clip in our gram, but do this for me. Go ahead and give a backdrop to, I guess, probably what demographic within our culture that we're talking about, because I could play both sides of the answer. But do that for me, and that'll probably give me some time to load the clip so we can get a short foundation of what we're talking about.
All right. Well, I kind of take the approach, with looking at it from different layers. I think, in my opinion, I don't think Black America has. I don't think we have. I don't think our ego was in the way. After really looking at the real definition and really doing a little bit of research and looking into what an ego is, I don't think our ego is in the way. I think there are certain demographics, you know, in our community. Some athletes, maybe, yeah, okay. Some uh, maybe in our relationships, there may be an ego situation on both ends. Um, in the church, there may be a misrepresentation of what the ego is. I think it exists in every level, of the demographic of Black America. I think there is an ego issue. My perspective is I think there's an issue with an overinflated ego. I think we have too many people that suffer from egotism, and when you actually are stuck in that I and self, and you're not able to expand beyond what you can do, kind of like what Kevin Hart was talking about. I think we have been overwhelmed with this number one spot. And I think by everybody trying to be number one, it causes people to really suffer from egotism where they could never get out of that. There's enough space for everybody. So, yeah, I don't think there's a demographic that isn't involved in that overinflated ego or that egotism. I think we just suffer in all levels. But I think our idea of what the ego is backwards. Because actually, when you have an ego, having an ego is actually healthy. It's when you inundate your thinking and your psyche with yourself. I think that's when it becomes a problem, when you're not able to include others, because when you have an overinflated ego, you're not concerned about how your behavior affects everybody else. But when you have an ego, you're able to keep yourself in line. You're able to keep appointments. You're able to stay focused longer, stuff like that. So I think we just suffer from an inability, to go beyond ourselves. That's what I think. I think we got a problem with that. I think that's why other races do much better than we do. I think every race has an ego, but I don't think every race suffers from egotism. And we'll get into that a little bit later, because it really blew my mind when I started looking at what Sigmund Freud and others thought about, kind of broke out in their psychoanalysis of what the ego was, and it really changed my perspective. on the ego, but we'll get into that later. But we're going to get into the video right now. We're going to show a clip so we can kind of give some perspective on what he was really talking about. Let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
What I'll do, probably for the safest bet of sharing a clip, is I think what we did was the audio, and I'm going to just allow the audio to play through my speakers here. Shouldn't take too long, but here we go. So we can get a background. This is Kevin Hart on I Am Athlete /Pivot podcast.
Our culture to that more than anybody else.
Sorry.
Our culture to that more than anybody else. Very self-destructive when we get to the places where that financial revenue changes. What you get? Oh, I should be getting how much is very, and that's a problem. So if you don't personally try to break that chain from the top by leading with the position of we are all going to be good because we want to make sure that we hold each other accountable, we take care of our own, but more importantly, we grow. The day that we get into the space of competitiveness, the day that our egos overpower and overshadow the opportunity ahead of us, we lose. Right now, if I ask you guys to tell me 5 bands, 5 music groups that are still together from back in the day, you're going to struggle. Yeah. Nobody asks themselves why. Why do they all break up? Money. Why do they all can break up? Right? The money? Why is that? I'm just saying, like, that's not nobody sees this. We ignore it. Why are we the culture that's always behind them now? This shit ain't work. It ain't working now. We ain't that. It ain't. I just heard Desus and Mero broke up, and I'm a fan of these guys. By the way, the future is so bright for that thing, that IP, that opportunity, or whatever. And I see him going back and forth on social media with what's happening? Why can't we ever surpass or overcome the financial hurdles that present themselves and stay connected? Why can't we do that?
It's called ego.
So you remove it.
Easier said than done in some circumstances.
It's actually not.
In some instances.
But when people say that, right? When they say it's easier said than done, and the ego is very present and dominant, right? You gotta ask yourself why. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Me and Dwayne Johnson are good friends.
I'm gonna stop it right there. Not because he just put on the air that him and Dwayne Johnson are good friends, but I think that enough was said there. Anyway, so you with me, bro? Suzette finally heard that. It's a delay, I think. But yeah, so back to the question, do we have an ego problem as a culture, and how prevalent is it? And is that getting in the way of our success? And of course, there's a yes and no to that. We do have obviously, beacons that are on the path and have made it as far as, not necessarily just talking sports and entertainment, but, Robert F. Smith, we have the few and far in between that have gotten there, Tyler Perry, et cetera. But we do have a persistent problem with egotism in our culture. And again, as Hart just said, we have to always wonder why. Why is that? And a lot of our problems culturally, systematically, the things that affect us, that are upon us as burdens, and that are self-inflicted as well, come from slavery. And we have this attitude that, first of all, our ego is bigger than it should be. And so, when we talk about ego, if I have it correct, I believe it is the perception of oneself. So you've got this consciousness and subconsciousness, and there should be a balance. But when it's out of balance, you are perceiving yourself more valuable, more worthwhile for others than you actually are. And we have that, and we put on the facade that we are better than the real us, the real me. I'm making it look like I'm more valuable than I really am. And I act in that way, that bravado, that independence, everything that, we talk about on this show is based on ego. And I think that what we have been a victim of is the scarcity effect that has been upon us since slavery and since Reconstruction. And it's always been the sacrificial person that had to do whatever to make it, and then look back at the following generation and say, well, you got to work 10 times harder than, you know, I did, or the other races and everything. And if you ain't balling, you falling. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I just made that up, by the way, but you can use it. But you know, we have this thing to where we've got to show off basically what others don't have, as if we made it, versus true wealth, in that case of financial woes and financial success, isn't all about that. It's not about that at all. You know, most people in other cultures, you wouldn't and should not know how wealthy they are by the way that they perceive themselves or their outward appearance. And we are the opposite a lot of times. We actually show our wealth or our perception of wealth and worth on ourselves. And that's backwards. So yes, we do have culturally a big problem with that.
I did answer the way I answered is that I do feel that our ego is in the way. Adapt this question to the fraud cycle. He feels that there's three parts to the ego. So the ego portion, you have the ego, you have the super ego, but the ego portion is between the too much and just the bare minimum. So I do think that it's in the way because sometimes we're out of touch, you know, with not only, and when I say out of touch in reality, I feel like some people are out of priority list. You know what I'm saying? Which is why some people wear their well in materialistic things, you know, versus pouring it into generational wealth, or maybe pouring it into the next you know, the cognitive side of wealth, you know, because what about finances? Sometimes wealth is about the knowledge that you have that you're on to another human being. That's invaluable at times. I do think our egos sometimes get in the way because we fail when it comes to prioritize and catapult the individual and the collective. You know, we have to realize and not only realize what, but also how do we organize it to a point to where we can catapult. Somehow we lost that momentum in generations past. The assignment, like, how can I catapult the next generations follow? They'll be in a better position financially, educational wise, family wise. We kind of lost that. We lost our way. You know, some decades back, egos are getting in the way, and we need to try to, you know, regroup and refocus and find what's the most important thing. How do we move our next generation, our children move to the next stage in life that they will leave a lasting residue, for lack of a better term, for the next generations. You know, what is the generation leaving for the generations behind them? Ego is making, you know, our ego at this point in time, we talk about the state of ego, is making it very, very, very selfish, because I don't think they're thinking about the generations behind us.
Yeah, I like exactly all that you said there, because the ego is putting self before the generations that are to come. We should be thinking 2 generations at least ahead in the moves that we're making. So I always have this thing about, because again, we're agriculture based in our family history. And so when we're talking about, you know, our farm, Johnson Farm Estate up in Willacoochee, you know, we always have this like this vision that my dad kind of instilled in us, that, you know, when you plant something such as an oak tree or pine tree, you know, pine is usually harvested. You're not going to see that in this generation as far as the harvest of that. You're planting that for perhaps 2 generations down for that harvest to really take hold. And so you touch on a great point there, Suzette, that the ego is preventing the sacrifice. It's preventing, or actually it's promoting the selfishness of basically hoarding all of the spoils, if you will, from financial gains in that one generation, if not from month to month, check to check. Just I'm trying to think of some other term, but basically it's get and spend, no matter what the amount is, and we cannot have that. We've got to have a foundation of working together as well, and that's one thing. In the whole interview, Kevin Hart spoke about as well. He's actually about to allude to that as well when he's talking about The Rock, the other Dwayne Johnson, to where him, DJ as he calls him, sort of coincidental there, but hey, he's not talking about me. But anyway, Rock, working with The Rock, working with Chris Rock, and also working with Wesley Snipes on a few projects here and there. And I looked all of them up, and these are examples of him taking his ego suppression to the next level. And what he's doing, and he used this term that we don't do very well in the field of suppressing the ego, is called partnerships. And that's what he and these other actors and entertainers are doing at this phase. And we see it all the time as well. Jay-Z, LeBron James, they're getting it. And we've got to start actually trickling that down to the mindset of our generation and the next one as well, that we've got to start building partnerships, because that's what, as you alluded to, just like with the other races, as far as, I think Elwood said it earlier, we are the only race that really suffers harshly against with egotism. And one of the main reasons is that we don't have a culture of partnerships.
I agree with you all, but I always respect, because I think for the most part, a lot of individuals have misused the word ego. When you hear people when you hear, for example, Beyonce, he got a big ego, or we've always said people, when they talk positively about themselves and they have some form of self-respect or self-esteem, if that is offensive to the person who's around you, people who have a weak ego take your sense of pride and self-respect and self-esteem as negative. So I think that we have to correctly and properly define ego. Ego by itself is not bad.
Correct. It's a natural force. It is what it is.
Exactly. The ego is nothing but the Latin word for I. The ego sits in between what was it? The I, the id, and the superego.
That's correct.
Yeah, between the id and the superego. Basically, your ego is the mediator between you being a person who can understand or learn vicariously through the mistakes of others, or your ego could be that person who has that inferiority complex, where if anybody is better than you, then you get offended. Your ego is your mediator. Your ego, if you have a strong ego, it's nothing wrong with having self-esteem and pride and self-respect, because that is the actual definition of ego. I think in the black community, because of where we came from, and I think Brother Black, I think you hit on this a little earlier, of how we kind of matriculated through slavery, and how we were all kind of conditioned to think that we were all low and we should all remain low. And so when anybody got that house Negro, field Negro type situation, and anybody who was kind of stepping out of the mold of what we were known to be at that time, then all of a sudden you had an ego. You better than us. Somebody who went to college, Joe Collins. You know what I'm saying? You learn how to, what was that, Joe Collins on the Clumps, or one, Nutty Professor, one of them. You had an opportunity. You can enunciate your words, and you have a skill, or you academically achieve. In the black community, people look at you and say, "Oh, you think you better than us, or your ego inflated." No, having an ego is somebody who has a certain level of self-respect and pride for who they are. But I think
In our
when it becomes a problem, is when you have an over exaggeration of who you are. When you
I
overly inflate who you are, you overly try to push that you're better and that you can do more. That's why Kevin Hart was saying this. There is no ego because I got a tequila. I'm already a blockbuster movie, a superstar. I don't need the validation. The ego is the thing that allows me to mediate and say, wait a minute, I've got to begin to understand that I have to kind of water down my pride or how I walk around in my guardedness a little bit for the greater good. That's the ego's purpose, is to mediate your current environment and to say, is that necessary for the greater good? And I think in the black community, whenever we say ego, we think of it as negative. It's not. It's not the ego. It's the over exaggeration or the weak ego. I want to give you this example, and I'm gonna turn it over to you, Suzette, 'cause your time is limited. Let me share this with you real quick.
It is.
I was looking at that because a strong ego is somebody who can they can plan well. They understand their strengths and weaknesses. They can focus on a task at a longer sense of time. They have an ability, to be more empathetic to others because they have that ability to walk in an equilibrium, to be able to mitigate the circumstances a lot better. When you have a weak ego, you have this inferiority complex. You have this fragile sense of identity, and you don't have an ability to. You're not even stable emotionally. I think when we use the word ego, we're using it improperly. The people who have a problem with the ego are people who actually have weak egos. That's what I think we have to begin to really to kind of differentiate, because if we're going to just say ego and just throw it out there as a blanket term, then we're misguiding the people who don't really understand what an ego is. I think we have to say a strong ego and a weak ego. Kevin said, I have a strong ego, therefore I don't need to be intimidated by anybody else. But if I have a weak ego, then I'm going to be the crab in the barrel. And that's what we're suffering with. We have too many people in our community with weak egos who don't know how to properly define those with strong egos. That's just my point. That's just my perspective. But go ahead, Sister Beautiful.
No. I mean, in addition to that, yes, there's definitely multiple layers of what egos are, and different areas is aligns more closely with one versus another. In addition to all of that, the problem is not only the definition of weak, but interject healthy and unhealthy egos, is the fact that with stereotypes, when you partner those egos up with buying, that's when you get into judging other people based on the outside, how they're living. You talked about that, earlier. If someone carries themselves a certain, and they're presumed to have an over ego, but basically you're judging that person based on your beliefs of what yours. So I think that a lot of that is combined with influences of stereotypical things that have happened over days. You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to definitely change the narrative, and what a healthy, or as you said, good or bad. Once we change that trajectory, which I honestly don't think that we're gonna. Our society judges. We live in a society that judges, quite judge on the outside. We don't take time out to really look inwardly and judge ourselves, those of us around us. So yeah, we need to. That's why my first, response, that our egos are getting in the way, because not only good and bad definitions of egos, but we're also partnering with negative connotations of what our stereotypes are. We're still buying in corner and defining, the stereotypes of our people, physical things, materialistic things, not the, which is what we should be looking at when we're talking about egos, because at the end of the day, that's it. But we don't base our egos on that. When we judge someone and say they have an inflated ego or whatever, we base it on what they can produce, that. So we definitely need to get a clear definition and a clear understanding goals are.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you, and thank you for that, because it allowed me to think a little bit further. And shout out to Miss Angela Ward. Thank you so much for joining us. I see you. I see you watching. I appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. If you're not following her podcast and her show, she's doing amazing work over there. Thank you so much, sis, for all that hard work you're doing. She's got all kind of representatives, and I think I can't remember what that person was. They might have been a congressman or senate or someone that she interviewed a little while back. She's doing some amazing work. So you all go over and follow Miss Angela Ward's podcast. Put your information in the chat, Miss Angela, so people can check out your work and follow you. Thank you so much, sis. Listen,
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up the fact that you said that we needed to do a better job with identifying the ego and kind of establishing where we are. You're absolutely correct. I want to share this with you really quick. As I was looking into that, around the ages of 2 to 3, when you start getting the language and stuff like that, you start developing cognitively as a child, as an infant, or as a toddler. You actually, an individual will continue to develop to the point where the ego starts to differentiate, and the superego develops. I want to share this with y'all. The superego represents the inhibitions of instinct and the control of impulses through the incorporation of parental and societal standards. I'm going to say that again. The superego starts to differentiate and to develop according to how we were raised,
Right.
and the society that we were raised in. This is important for Black America because everybody knows that Black parents parent very differently, for the most part, than most other races. Everybody knows that for the most part, the majority of us are brought up in a society that isn't conducive for success and or whatever other word you want to use, progression, what have you. I think one of the reasons why we suffer with the concept of ego because of how we were raised. I went into a little bit deeper study, and it said our moral standards that are perceived by the ego become a part of our personality. So how we were raised and the society that we live in actually will shape our personality, and it will also guide our ego.
Right.
Look at some of this. Look at the environments we're growing up in. Look at the neighborhoods.
That's what I was about to say, is that you got to look at basically what are we exposed to and what we're not exposed to. Most of the time, what we're not exposed to is the problem compared to people who are exposed to limited factors.
Exactly. And to say that, it points to the fact that it goes back to social conditioning. We're not even understanding that though the powers that be have taken into consideration how to shape your ego and how you feel about yourself and the people who look like you.
Right.
So some of them has been engineered on such a high level that they already knew that if I shape how your parents raise you, if I shape the society that you live in, I can shape how you think about yourself, and I can shape how you think about the people that look like you, i.e., house Negro, field Negro. We're from the same descendants. We have the same blood, but because of the tone or the tint of our melanin, we have developed a perception about each other prior to even having a conversation, which is why we
Yeah.
have the colorism. So, I mean, what you think about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think? Am I off?
No, you're not off. And again, uh, at the risk that does, kind of placate to the stereotype that are out there. But that is intertwined and can with the Willie Lynch letter. That kind of talks about basis ran down. So you want to take a look at that. Those of our viewers that get an opportunity, check into the Willie Lynch letter. It kind of talks about that. But we deprogramming. We have to do a lot of deprogramming if we want to tap into essence of what a healthy or what a good and a bad ego is. But a lot easier and more trendy to just kind of follow the masses right now. The masses super
Well,
ego.
let me give you when you say that, let me give you an unpopular thought as well to add to that.
Yeah.
Again, the background that Black just shared, and just like you said, as far as where the ego gets really influenced by the super ego, which is back to the parenting. Again, one, we already established the parenting. If you ask the why parenting is the way it is in the Black community, we hit a rock when we get to slavery. Yeah. That's the source of that. The other thing is that if the super ego that develops in our children is limited by the parenting, then we've got to do a better job as parents to open the restraints with regards to how a child's ego develops. And based on the trying to see where it was, based on the models that are being taught by parents, is controlling, as Brother Boulder already said, it's controlling the actions, the feelings, the fantasies, things that you actually imagine, in other words, and as well it's controlling what you think. And so with that, the unpopular thought that I have is that we've got to be a little bit more willing to accept different ways people are raised in our belief systems, because a lot of the constraints that we have upon the way that we are raising kids is based on just cultural norm. And that is a super ego control thing, the cultural norms that we have. And so when we're parenting, and it's just, I'm speaking from my own practices here, but having the conversations of why, and you fill in the blank, whatever that topic is, whether it's spirituality, whether it's saying, I don't know, bless you, where does that come from? Why do we say it? Because it's cultural norm. We don't even think about it, and we don't even, do you look at somebody crazy if they don't say bless you? Well, why is that odd? Or why is it even odd that you said it? But the thing is that we don't actually test some of the cultural rules that we have in play, which then binds that child's super ego to develop in a way that is limiting. And again, in the Black community, there's a more calloused way that develops. And again, if we're developing callousness into that super ego and that growth, then that's where the limiting factors come into play in our communities.
I agree with that 100%. So it's kind of a tunnel vision of kind of traditional what we interject into our parenting, but we do have to play and kind of adapt a more positive and more productive and effective way. A lot of people say, well, that's how I was raised and that's how they were raised, but that might and in previous generations, but we're in a new day. We have to adapt. You know what I'm saying? We have to, just like so we have to make sure that we're constantly evolving, but we're not evolving in a negative light. We have to evolve to the next level up, or even go lateral. You know, we need to go up, up, up. But gentlemen, I'm finna bow. Let me say my goodbyes. I miss y'all. I love y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all in Queens. Thank y'all for tuning in. Everyone, all the viewers. So I see. I'm finna go ahead and work for these coins and get my ego in check. You know, Wayne, tell your best friend Kevin Hart. I said, hey, go, and I'm ready to try some of that juice. So, yeah, and let
hit me up.
yeah, let me
Hit me up.
yeah, let me know. Let me know juice it, and then I'll be there to support. But and otherwise,
all right. See you, sis.
As always, we appreciate sis for chiming in on her limited time and dropping some knowledge, with us. So we appreciate that, because I know she's got duties where she is on site. So to take some time out, that's a very demanding schedule she has to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to kind of dig into that, because she was saying, we should adapt, to the new standards, and my question was going to be, we should adapt, but should we get away from those core foundations that got us through? The reason I asked that question is because actually, your moral standards, that your ego perceive, actually shapes your personality. So how the morals that you were brought up with, your ego will then take those moral principles and begin to shape your personality. And so when you start talking about the bless you and all that, a lot of that is cultural, but it is also geographic. You know what I'm saying? Because the morals in different areas are different. For example, when I went to go play college ball, of course, when you go, to the next level, you got, teammates from all over the nation, and sometimes from other continents. And I had a teammate from Nigeria. His culture was very different from my teammate that was from Canada. His was very different from my teammates from New York. You know what I'm saying? So we all are brought up with these different moral principles that actually shape our personalities, which in turn help us deal with conflict. We're going to have to begin to understand that our ego isn't this single layered situation. Your ego has so many different levels and layers. It's multifaceted to the point that it's a piece of a whole. To put it like that, it's an and or type situation, simply because it depends on some of the dynamics that you were brought up with, which will shape your ego, which will shape your personality, which helps you deal with conflict, which in turn strengthens or weakens your ego. So we have to understand that there are a lot of different factors that come into play with our ego, and as people of color, we're going to have to try that. That's why we did much better in times past when it came to accepting other people just because they were black. I'm black and I'm proud. Before the segregation situation, or integration situation, we were run the black business because they were black. Sometimes it wasn't because we knew them or because we went to school with them or because they were family members. Sometimes it was just because it was black business and we knew the importance of group economics. You know what I'm saying? That was having a strong ego. But what we don't understand is that the very thing that helps you deal better with your ego is something called conflict. Because conflict helps you build up defense mechanisms. That's one of the reasons why our ego has been the overall concept of our ego has been shattered, is because of the conflict that we dealt with. We have conflict with other brothers and sisters. We'll have conflict with the system. We'll have conflict with perspective. We'll have conflict of religion. We'll have conflict of this, that, and the third. And we build up defense mechanisms through that conflict. And then we say at the end of that, I don't deal with them kind of folk. I don't deal with them. I ain't going up. No, You know how we do. You know what I'm saying? Just with black business. You've been talking about this since we've been on. Some of us have had, conflict with black business owners. And because of that, we built up a defense mechanism to say, I don't deal with black business because they don't have this, or, they don't have that, or the customer service is this, that, and the third, when you haven't dealt with every black entrepreneur.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So that shapes our ego. So we have to go back to the drawing board and start to increase our sample size or our pool size when we're having, when we're trying to develop this perspective about how we deal with each other. Because sometimes we'll have one or two bad experiences with a black business, and from that point on, we don't do business with no more black folk. You know what I'm saying? Your sample size was 2 experiences.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's no different in our relationships. You and I as black men have heard since we've gotten into the dating realm, since we started, bringing, notes to school. Will you go with me? Yes or no? We've always heard that black men are dogs. We've always heard that all men are dogs. And these come from a small group of women who have dealt with a small group of men. And through that conflict, they built up a defense mechanism to say all of them bad. That has affected your ego. And so, and we can see.
And we're the culture that does that.
What's that?
I say we're the culture that does that, unfortunately, because all races deal with men who cheat. So why is it that our culture is the one that has now personified ourselves as dogs and dealing with stuff like that?
Facts. Because I mean, sometimes the loudest wheel on the wagon ain't the weakest. You see what I'm saying? It's just the fact that you hear it the most.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to understand that when we have these conflicts, and this goes back to what Kevin Hart was saying, when we have these bad experiences with each other, we have to continue to move forward and increase our sample size. You know what I'm saying? We have to understand that instead of saying, okay, these 1 or 2 or 3 are bad experiences, does not mean that the whole is bad. And I think because they've been able to move, because I'm sure Kevin Hart has had bad business deals with black people. I'm sure he's been swindled by financial advisors and accountants and business managers and all that. I'm sure they've all had bad experiences with black people in business, but they had to move past those small number of conflicts to see the greater picture, to understand that I can't brand my perspective by 2 or 3 bad experiences.
It makes you smarter in the way that you move. And so, like, for instance, like you already said, you have to go through that in order to build that ego through conflict. But it should not, just like you're saying, it should not put you at odds of partnering and doing business with another black entity. What it should do is, I guess, basically harden your criteria. I'll put it like that. That my one goal is to do business with black vendors, entrepreneurs, supporters, etc. And no matter how that looks to other people, I don't care. And that's me talking personally. And to the point that you hear the chatter from other rooms because that's the way that you are. But I've hardened that layer to where it doesn't matter because, as you said, like, the end goal is what matters to me. The way that we move forward in the city. Go ahead.
But you know what? I don't want to cut off your wisdom, bro. But do you know that some people will hear that? To hear people say, I'm able to block out, the noise, and I don't listen to that. Kind of like we hear people say giraffes don't speak the same language as turtles. You know what I'm saying? We've heard people say that. But when you talk like that, some people will take offense to that, not realizing that what you have done is actually you have developed your ego to the point where you have a strong ego. It's not overinflated. It's a healthy ego that you're able to say, I don't listen to that. I don't get bogged down in the minutia. But some people will take offense to that when you talk on such a high level. They're not understanding that when you get offended by people who talk so positively of themselves, you have a thwarted or a fragile sense of identity. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
When you could
it goes back. It goes back to the basic foundation of that goes back to what you said a couple of times before: is house Negro, field Negro.
right.
Who's always looking inside to say, he spoke too much. He shouldn't have said that. I would never, blah, blah, blah. All things you just said. That's that mentality that we have to deal with. And we've got to get past that.
I want to ask you a question because I know, and I want to shift it because I don't want to. I know business is group economics is really, in my opinion, the best vehicle out of the economic problem that we're in. In my opinion, I think group economics that's it. I mean, if we could just grab a hold to that, forget about if we. I won't say forget. If we would just move out of the way politics, if we would move out of the way religion, if we move out of the way our personal perspectives, and just grab the concept of group economics, I think that in itself will have a ricochet effect and help us deal with some of these other ideologies that are, in my opinion, idiotic in many cases on how we deal with each other based on your religious affiliation or whatever. I think if we grab a hold to this group economics model and just move in one direction and just do business with each other just because we are part of the same community would help us see how our ego or how our weak ego and our overinflated ego has negatively affected every other part of our life. Because I wanted to ask you a question. Not only do we have an ego issue in our business practices, but our relationships, but our parenting, our marriage,
Let's go and segue there.
Relationship.
Yeah, let's go and segue there because that was gonna. I'm not. Go ahead. Excuse me.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up because I think in this day and time, I think about my grandparents and their relationship. If I'm not mistaken, I know that my grandparents were married at least 60 years before my granddad passed. At least 60, because if I remember correctly, my grandfather was like 23, 24, somewhere in there when he married my grandmother. I think she was like 19, 18 or 19 or something like, if I remember correctly. And I remember them having, 50, 55 years, etc., celebrating marriage. And I never saw my grandmother's ego get out of line. Now, again, I was a grandchild. But I also have asked my uncles, my mom, my aunts, what was their experience growing up in the house with them. And they never saw my grandfather or my grandmother's ego get out of hand. They were never disrespect. If they ever had a conflict, if I ask all my uncles that are still living and my aunts that are still living, they will tell you they never fussed and argued in front of the family. They had 10 children, and they never had a disagreement in front of the children that would make the children feel uncomfortable or feel like something was going wrong in the marriage. And so I look at that generation, and I look at this generation, our generation, and the one that's available now. There's a huge issue with ego on both sides.
Yeah.
And it is really, really harming our ability to build what our grandparents and our great-grandparents were able to build. How are they able to stay married 80% or more in Jim Crow than us right now, as free as we are? So do you think that our ego is in the way in our family structure in 2022?
It's across the board. I mean, it's across the board. You know, you could take that very example, take out the marriage piece, take out the perception of the partnership that goes into marriage, and insert business into it. How is it that in the Renaissance era, the 20s and everything, where we had more successful businesses back then than we do here now, and we have access to information and resources? Right. There is a partnership that has to happen between the community and the business owner. There's a partnership that have to happen to those in play with the business. Just like Kevin Hart said about, you know, 90s R&B groups, you know, name one that's around, because the partnership blew up over money. And so I'm sure that happened in the past, the way past decades and ago, basically a century from now, or, you know, previous to now. But it's very prevalent in everything that we're experiencing, whether it's parenting, whether it's male-female relationships, and in the business community as well. There is a problem with actually owning the accountability of one's ego. And when you do not control that, it's obvious. It shows. It's not taking advice, you know, from a business standpoint, from a marital standpoint, from a partnership standpoint. You know, there are a number of businesses that I'm not going to, you know, call out, but, you know, probably can just go a short list. The ones that have closed in the past 5 years that I've seen here, some of them have just closed simply because of ego. You know, they haven't reached out necessarily to take heed to partnerships, take heed to advice that could have been given in the business community. The reason why we can't move forward in some of our communities is because of ego. We're so segregated in what we're doing that we will not come together. And when we do come together or try to, it's looked at as if, look at such and such. The other final thing that I would say that I was actually going to transition, you know, it's all in the same realm here, but my segue was going to be using the fact that you have to do a great job of developing criteria as your ego develops at a higher level. You know, when we talked about, you know, particularly like from my perspective of ego that, you know, you associate it with regard to business. One thing that we don't do at this stage is do business with anybody, just anybody. All right. But we do make it a priority to do business with Black business owners. Does that happen 100% across the board? No, it doesn't. Do I want it to be? No, I don't, because we're not the best in everything. I can't get all my suppliers from Black business owners. Would I like to eventually? That'd be great in the perfect world. But the practice has to be, at least that's your intent, to look. But if our criteria isn't met, I'm not going to get a substandard service and not develop at the same level as a business owner. So you can insert business owner with marriage, with parenting. That's like saying, would I get my advice only from people that wrote a Black book on parenting? Yes, in some cases I do have that down here. But there are also ideals that I can get from other cultures, Indian culture, Hispanic culture, Caucasian culture, that have already done this and figured it out, and they want to share that advice. So again, going back to across the board, parenting, relationships, I'd have to get some of my information in order to grow from outside my culture. And that's where I think we limited ourselves, as I alluded to before, is about exposure. We're not exposing, and I'll take it back to take a little bit of that bite off of saying we're not. In some cases, we're unable to, right? You know, people are trying their hardest to make the best that they can and want the best for their families and their relationships. But there are times where we're just not doing enough for ourselves in this age. We're 2022. As I tell my kids, there's no excuse at this point. You know, I had a talk with them and with my dad. The way that they're growing up is much different than we grew up, bro. I mean, you had to pull out I'm sorry, I'm trying to just reach for a book, just any book. You had to pull out an encyclopedia volume to get the information that you wanted.
Right.
Now,
Got your hands.
you got a computer right in your hand nowadays. You got access to all the information that you can to grow in your hands. And until we start going beyond our comfort zone of learning self-help practices, again, how to deal with the ego. I'm like, now because of this, I'm YouTubing, to understand more about the ego, So that's what I'm saying, is that because of branched out conversations, we should be exploring new things, not now turning this off and then looking at Basketball Wives.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is where we control a lot of that, and I'll leave it there.
Well, and you're right. You know what I'm saying? Because it is a much deeper issue. I think it has a lot to do with our inability to self validate. Now, the weak ego and the big ego. The self is really based on a very shaky foundation, and the self is always constantly looking for ways to reassure itself and cover up its insecurities. I think for the most part we're not reassured in our home. There's a scripture that I learned as a child, and
there you go, bingo.
And then what's that?
No, I said bingo. Go ahead, you hit it.
Yeah, there's a scripture that I learned as a child. That charity begins at home. When you think about something being the healthy ego should be developed and have its foundation from your parents. Again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier about that parental and that societal environment. We should be able to help our children and others in business, if we wanted to, kind of expose it to other areas, to reassure others that we're in business with, or that we're in partnership with, or that we're in covenant with, that we are there to help them be validated and to help them deal with their insecurities. Because insecurities is actually the part of us that causes us to try to cover up our bad side and be validated by more wealth, by more money, by more power, by more success. Here it is, by getting into the country club, by being able to move into the upper echelon neighborhoods, and we validate ourselves by the car that we drive, or the Gucci or the Christian Louboutin that we wear, not realizing those things are cover-ups for a shattered ego, having those insecurities. I think we need to, as you were saying, be able to validate the people in our lives and the people we do business with, and understand that, yes, I may be successful. Yes, I may have a little more knowledge than you. Yes, I may be the spook that sat by the door, but you couldn't even get in the building. But at the end of the day, we are in this together. So if I'm wearing a suit and you're wearing some overalls, it doesn't exclude you from success. It doesn't exclude you from access. I think that's what's really missing, is the fact that when we get an opportunity to acquire certain things that we validate ourselves with, we highlight other people's insecurities, and because we don't know how to deal with other people, we kind of get viewed as the person with the overinflated ego. When in fact, the both of us need to learn how to work together so that we can understand that our validation goes beyond what we're wearing, what we're driving, where we're living, and just the very sense of the fact that I appreciate you for what you bring to the table. You see what I'm saying? I think that's a huge part that's missing in our communities, because if you look at it, we've been having this conversation for over 30, 40 years, if not more, that anytime anybody gets a little bit of money, they get a little bit of status, get a little bit of notoriety, they move out the hood, and they have no more affiliation with the people who they grew up with. And at that particular point, I think both have a misconception of each other's ego. And I think that's where the conflict comes in, because then they say, you better than us. And the people that's over here that's living in the country club or living in the gated community to say you're beneath me, when in fact we both need each other. Go back to Kevin Hart's point, in order to be successful. A misappropriation and a misconception of what an ego is, I think, is what got us in this condition where we are right now. We're looking at what we bring to the table as far as material things, as far as hookups, etc., instead of what people can bring as intellectual property. You know what I'm saying, to the group, because I may not have it all, but I may have a skill that could be that can really be a blessing to you, and you might have the access that could be a blessing to my skill. I think when we start looking like that and thinking on that level, I think that'll be one of the maybe the second or third wave that will bring us out of the problem we're in. And like you said earlier, we're able to use it in business and in marriages, or in community situations or whatever. So that's just my piece.
No, you hit it on the head. Yeah, you hit on the head. I mean, a lot of what I'll add, just that a lot of what you're saying there starts at home, and you alluded to that in the beginning of we've got to start building self egos in home, strong egos in the home. And I'll just as a reference point give a shout out, obviously to my mom and dad, but specifically my mom. I mean she, when the cliche of your mom is your greatest fan, man, I can still hear it to my go DJ, you know what I'm saying? So and she would always have these talks that like just little things that are not even like otherwise she'd say, you are so handsome, stuff like that. Of course, again, building ego. But she would always say things like, you have nice hands, you have engineering hands. I mean, she's like dropping seeds into me. And so that's what, yeah, exactly. And then my dad on his side, he's always basically promoting excellence and, leading by example, leading by, direct example as well. But, at the same edge of it, you can kind of follow footsteps that you may or may not fulfill, but at least you're following them. And so that is part of what the responsibility is to the generation that you are in, is to set the example, speak the examples, drop seeds, drop knowledge and wisdom, and share. And just like you alluded to before, or just then, is that now looking back and uplifting someone else.
Yeah.
Now that you gained all this knowledge, go back and uplift somebody else, because it's not worth it if you have not pulled the rest of the community, figuratively speaking, pulled the rest of the community forward in some way or fashion, because you segregated yourself because you feel that you're up here and everyone else is down there.
A wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, understanding that when you get to the point where you got that knowledge, or you got that insight, or you got that bag, it don't mean you're nothing if you got to die with it, my man. You know what I'm saying? It don't mean nothing, But you said something that blew my mind, that I didn't think about. The mother and the father develop your super ego. They also develop the id. They also develop the pure ego in you. I think that's the yin and the yang, that masculine, feminine. I think that's another reason why we in our community have to push co-parenting. If we have children who, with someone and we're not married to them, etc., it's important for us to always have that masculine, feminine dynamic in our children's lives, so we give them a balanced vantage point of life. We give them a balanced vantage point perspective of a family or business or because, for example, we already know if a little boy hears the feminine all his life, he'll never be able to handle the other side of the ego that a drill sergeant will give you. He won't do well, when he goes to boot camp, because he's never heard that other side of the ego where it's void of your feelings. We're looking for outcome here. You see what I'm saying? And so I think that's something that we're going to have to start to really, really, really push and purport in our communities to that very point, that we have a lot of single parents, single mothers, and single fathers in our community. but we don't push that enough. I don't think we push it enough for both sides understand that we need each other,
Right.
regardless of how that child got here. One night stand, whether you were in a trauma bond or whatever your relationship was, however you all got to the situation you're in. I think because we haven't focused on that true source of ego and its importance, I think that's why we got a lot of what we got going on right now. I'm not even going to identify it. I'm not even going to delineate all that other stuff. But we know that our community is shattered, and I think that is also a result of us misappropriating what the ego can do. With raising our children and building a better generation. I want to hear from some of our listeners. Some of your thoughts on this ego conversation, because in my opinion, I think that we take Black History Month and Black Pride too far. This is my opinion, because I think we take it too far because we don't do anything positive with it.
Right. I figured you go there, and that's correct.
Yeah, like we just, we love Black History Month because it's a month for us to focus on Black folk. At the same time, the other demographic use that opportunity to monetize and make money
Correct.
off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like when we had that Barack Obama Boulevard or Drive or whatever they called it in Valdosta, when they changed, what was it, Forest Street? Or
Yeah.
I forgot. Was it Forest Street? They changed the name, but I wasn't excited about it because it was nothing but a token. It did nothing for the economic value of our community. Right. You know what I'm saying? It didn't bring any business. It didn't bring any resources. It didn't bring any grants. It didn't bring none of that. It just changed the name, and it changed the name to somebody who had a direct relation to the other side of the fence anyway. So, you know what I'm saying? It didn't really do anything. It was nothing but another monument. It was another Martin Luther King moment that they recreated. It was a modern day Martin Luther King moment to change the name of the street and for us to go haywire and to go crazy and to be happy over the changing of a name. But that was it. You know what I'm saying? So
the chess piece did not move.
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, but what do y'all think? What do y'all think in the chat? I mean, are we off? Or are we in line with the thinking? What are your thoughts? Do you think that our ego is in our way, or do you think we are just misappropriating what our ego can do for us? Because a lot of people, this is a great example right here, bro.
What's up?
For a long time, a lot of people who weren't even basketball fans put Michael Jordan at the pinnacle of basketball.
Right.
Until they saw that series on Netflix.
Right. The Last Dance.
The last day. And when they saw in real time what an ego does,
right,
a lot of people changed how they viewed Michael Jordan. They don't realize a lot of people looked at Michael Jordan's ego and was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know he was such a butthole. I didn't know he was this, that, the third." But they, again, a misappropriation of the term. Because when you have Kobe was the same way.
I was about to say that a minute ago. Yeah, you have to be.
Exactly.
That's why I alluded to before that. Even in the business world, just bringing it down to local business or local egotism, is that once you get to the next stage, that ego has to turn with it. That has to develop with it. Has to grow and get stronger, more callous, and has higher criteria. You cannot treat everybody like you did at your lower ego. Once you develop a higher, stronger ego, it has to be different.
Facts. And I think, again, it goes back, we talk about being in the home. When we're not taught on how, when we don't have a strong moral base to be able to maintain your morals during conflict, that's when we build up those defense mechanisms and then start saying, you think you're better than everybody else, Right. When in fact, you begin to see yourself for who you really are. We behold ourselves, we hold out our reflection in the glass, in the mirror. and we see ourselves for who we really are. And when we have an overinflated or a fragile sense of our identity, when we see ourselves as broken and we see them better, we'll turn it around and make them bad and make us okay. Because they have done the work. They have made the sacrifices. And because you're jealous or because you don't have enough faith in yourself to do the same work they did, you'll try to make them out to be the villain, when in fact, they are the ones that are on their way to real success because they've dealt with their ego. A lot of us don't, there are people, and I'm not purporting this. This is just, for the sake of conversation. There are some people who resort to psychology and psychoanalysis and psychotherapy and even psychotropic and even drugs to address their ego, or what people call deal with their demons.
Right.
Because it's a real thing.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize it's a real. Some of us don't. I'm about to go in places some people think is whatever, but we don't even realize that the food we drink, the food we eat, and the things that we drink affect our ego. Just for example, when you get drunk, you tell the truth. Huh?
Yep.
It's going to affect your ego. You know what I'm saying? The things that you eat will affect how you think about yourself.
Correct.
And I think in our community, we haven't, because when we look at it, it's taboo. Oh, we can, that brother said it, the truth serum. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? We heard this when we were children. You know what I'm saying? If you want to hear the truth, listen, bro. You knew I grew up on the west side, right over there by the cab stand, right over there by what's the name of that club at the end of the street? I can't think of the name of that club that was at the end of the street. It was the cab stand and it was something, but everybody had a hole in the wall. But we all knew if you wanted to hear the truth, listen to a drunk man talk. He'll tell you how you feel about you for real. Because it's going to come out. And I think a lot of us haven't had the opportunity to really sit down and deal with our own demons. Black folk, we hide it in our religion. We hide it in our spiritual practices. We hide it in sex. We hide it in drugs. We hide it in affiliations and organizations. We hide it, but we all know eventually the truth is going to come out. And the way the truth comes out is what I said about 45 minutes ago, when you deal with conflict. Yeah. That's why when you're with, you know what I'm saying, you start picking a marriage partner, you won't know that person until they get into a situation, or until you cross them, or until you said something that they don't like, or put them in a circumstance they don't like. That's when they're going to tell you the truth, because they have been covering up their insecurities and hiding it because they have a shattered ego. Brother Cedric said the drunk uncle at the family reunion tell all, exactly. You tell all the family secrets. My granddaddy was in the corner at High Tower, and absolutely, bro, that's where I grew up at, right there at the cab stand. I cannot remember the name of that club that was right across the street from the cab. I cannot remember. But I know Uncle Junior. Wow. Listen, I'm trying to tell y'all, I think in the black community, and this is a good segue for us for our last 30 minutes. I think in the black community, I think we run. I think we run. Speed's Game Room. Yeah, that was up there off of Gordon Street, right across from the old West Gordon. Y'all remember Speed? Yep, the pie joint. There it is. Y'all remember? Now, some of y'all don't know about the pie joint. The pie. Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now we got some talk going on.
You remember that pie joint situation? You go down to the pie joint, you're gonna hear some truth now. They're gonna tell you about yourself. But listen, I think in the black community, we are hiding from our shattered egos. Listen, bro, it happens even in the church. Because I wanted us to, to touch on this too. The black church, the black Muslims, black Hebrew Israelites, all of us are suffering from shattered egos. We are so caught up in our egos that we can't even accept each other's differences in spiritual practices.
Wow.
And that's coming from a devout Christian. I aspire to be. I want to be. I got my weaknesses. I got my faults. But just the fact that the stuff that, for example, a lot of the things that we've learned in Christianity over the last few years that we're learning were cover-ups, where they gave us alternatives and all this other stuff. We have to put our ego down to learn the real truth and accept it. We can't even do that. But it's not just, you know what I'm saying? It's not just in the church. Even for people who don't follow Christianity, or people who don't follow Black Hebrew Israelism, or the, it's no such as Black Muslim, but the Muslim movement. We won't even do business with each other because of who we call at the end of our prayers. And I think it was all by design for us to be so devout and believe that we will drop the bag because somebody says in the name of Allah at the end, and somebody says in Jesus' name at the end, and somebody says in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach at the end. If we separate all three of those, some people say, no, I ain't dealing with them. They're going to hell. Even in church. This is crazy. Why do we have 1 million churches in a city? I'm going to say it. Why do we got so many, bro? Because we got too many people in our community suffering from shattered egos. You got 5 people in your church, and everybody else going to hell. It goes far beyond. Kevin Hart didn't even know, bro, that he wasn't just talking about him and Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock and Dwayne Johnson. He was talking about your local churches. He was talking about your local T-shirt business.
I was going to say it, but I didn't say it.
He was talking about your local mentoring program. He was talking about your local sorority and fraternity.
Here it comes.
I told you, I got the red light on tonight. It's red light district. There you go. I'm dropping bombs and shots fired, bro. We can't even be. Look at my shirt. We can't even be excellent in our blackness because we're too caught up in our ego. This is crazy, bro. It's crazy. And that's
worried about who you represent.
That's one reason why we suffer so much in our community, because Kevin Hart was prophetic when he said we have an overinflated ego issue in our community. And too many of us want to be the top dog. Forget about the top dog. Let's be second in command and go get this bag.
Yep.
Because that's what they doing.
Kevin Hart said he's approaching these other entertainers and actors, and I don't care who is headlining, we're going to get the bag. Fact. I don't care if it's 50-50, whatever we need to do to make it happen, let's make it happen.
Facts. Bro, I'm going to say something that a lot of people don't know, but I'm going to put it out there. There is a backpack drive that they have every year at the fairgrounds.
Tell it.
A lot of people don't know that started when me and Bishop McCray got together and started partnering and started giving out bags back in 2014, 2013. I ain't looking for no credit.
Partnering.
I was looking at the fact that I wanted to partner with another organization who had connections, who had people in their church who were part of organizations that could be a benefit. I didn't care 2 cents about putting my name on nothing. And I never did from day one. And because of the ingenuity and the connections that they had, they took it and ran with it. And look what it is now. But we got too much of an ego issue. Who cares about your name in the lights? Let's get this bag. You got people in Valdosta who know how to write grants, who got connections in all kinds of organizations, who are on the city council, who are in politics, who are up in Atlanta, who will smile in your face and won't give you one secret to how to get out of the situation you're in because your ego too big. I told you I got the red light on tonight, dog. I've been gone too long. It's crazy. But you know what I'm saying? Even with the podcast, even with the stuff we do in here, some people won't even watch because they don't like me.
X.
Got your ego all twisted up, bro. And we got to go get this bag. Just like when Sister Angela was on earlier. Sister Angela's doing an amazing job. Angela Ward is doing an amazing job. Amazing job, bro. Amazing job.
And you know what? Hey, hold on though, because I thought you were going to go there. She's doing an amazing job. And the thing that she always has to deal with is us saying, why are you always talking to them Republicans? It don't matter, guys. Support the system, because what she's doing is dropping science. You need to know about your counterparts. You need to know how they think. You need to also know what your own community is saying as well, faithfully so. But you also need to know a little bit more about the other side.
Bro, you telling facts. I'm telling you, man, I don't know what it is. We got this crab in the barrel situation that we really don't want to see each other move forward. I don't care what people say. We get all this black pop. Bro, look at our Juneteenth. The city of Valdosta is what, 70% black in the city limits? The last time I looked at, I think it was like 70-something% in the city.
Between 50 and 70, yep. Majority, basically.
Yeah, and even with that, what do you call that? That variation. Even with that variation, I mean, still, with all of that involved with our small community in Valdosta, there is no way we should not have like you were saying, a black chamber of commerce. There's no way we shouldn't have a black city hall. There's no way we shouldn't have any of that. We got too many educated people, too many people in our community who are connected that we don't have more than what we have. Our ego is out of order, bro. I don't care what nobody says. For the most part, yeah, a black sheriff, a black mayor, a black police chief, because we're the ones they're dealing with on the highest percentage. They're arresting us most of the time. They're raiding our communities most of the time. They're patrolling most of our communities. So why not have somebody who looks like us in leadership? It's because we got too many of our people who have a shattered ego and have a false sense of identity. So when it comes to dealing with each other, we feel like we're on another level. We feel like we're better than them. When in fact we're no better. What does it say? You're no stronger than your weakest link. Not realizing we need to be connected to the weakest part of our community, because that's where we're going to gain the most of our solidarity and our strength. But because we can't get it together, bro, we got to go do the work. We got to learn. My grandfather told me something a long time ago when I was a little bitty boy. He said, "Son, you'll learn a lot when you shut your mouth." He said, "If you close your mouth and listen, you'll learn a whole lot." And most of us want to get up and, we act like we know it all. We got the remedy and et cetera, but we need to learn how to get into a collective and walk with our people and group up with our folks, get some of that knowledge. You'll be surprised some of the information we can get, some of that inside info we can get if we could just partner, if we could just get in solidarity with some of these people that are in leadership, that are in law enforcement, that are in the fire department, some of the opportunities that are there. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot that there are initiatives out there where they want to hire people of color. But because we have such a thwarted view of each other, we don't even share a lot of those opportunities with the people who are qualified because we're scared that they're going to be our superior. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot, Brother Citizen. I wonder how many would support me if I ran for sheriff. The last 4 or 5 elections had a black candidate. You see what I'm saying? We don't even trust in the ingenuity, the education, you know what I'm saying, and the knowledge and wisdom of the people who are already in position. It's crazy. That's why we went crazy when we saw Brother Barack Obama. When he came up, oh man, an articulate brother who could quote unquote connect, you know what I'm saying, with the black experience, and we still found reason to break him down. And in many instances, rightfully so, but for the greater the good, you know what I'm saying, we should be able to take some of the positives from that experience and be able to take that back home and build and grow. There's nowhere in the world that in the last 14 years, we shouldn't be much further than we are. 2008, we got our first black president, correct?
2008.
14 years later, it seems like we're going backwards. And I think it's because we find reasons to find fault in our leadership. We find reasons to find fault in the people who are in line, to be their representative, and the people who are in line have a false representation of the people who people that don't live around him, and the people who he don't affiliate with. We are both looking at each other out of the wrong lenses. We both got beer goggles on, looking at each other, and it is definitely putting our future in the hands of people who really don't care about us. And you're right, bro. J.D. Rice for mayor, there's no way in the world he shouldn't have won. Because there's no way in the world ego.
We should not still be trying to get a black mayor. Trying.
Exactly.
That could be a very easy thing to surpass at this point.
Exactly.
And just like you said, that with all of the ongoings and the progress that had seemingly gone on, we'd say about 14 years ago, and for us to now still be in the place that we are, and I'm speaking about South Georgia, particularly Lowndes County, Valdosta, but South Georgia, because progress is being made in other areas. And shout out to those that are part of that in those areas of Georgia, of the southeastern U.S. and in other spots. But we have a problem in South Georgia. We have a problem in Lowndes County, Valdosta, when it comes to black excellence, black progression. I'm not talking about on an individual basis, but on a collective scale. We have a problem, and that's what you just actually described to the fullest, Bo. We've got to be able to do better than this. Mm-hmm. And it only starts, we talked about at the home, we talked about in our communities, we talked about when someone gets to a certain level, it's twofold. That person that's at that level cannot look back and say, I'm better than everyone else. I've surpassed that and I should not uplift. The person on the other end of the spectrum should not be trying to tear that person down. You should not be trying to look for ways to gossip and bring someone down indirectly through conversation.
Right.
A lot of this actually is going on right now. We got to stop that silliness and look at the larger picture.
We got to, bro. We really do. I don't know. I don't know when it's going to happen, but that's one thing that I've definitely been, training my children and speaking to them about is being able to understand your worth and your value when nobody else sees it. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have to be able to look at yourself and say, regardless of what people say about me, I know who I am. I know who I belong. If nobody else cheers for me, if nobody else pats me on the back, I know when I get home. I know when my dad picks me up from school. I know when I come home from work. I know when I talk to my mom and my dad, they are going to continuously validate who I am. I think we're going to have to start looking at our children as our canvas for our future. And any adult that follows suit, I think that's good, because you know how it is trying to change grown folk. That's almost a mission impossible in many cases. I think we need to really, 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 really pour 1,000% into a positive, healthy, strong ego for our children and helping them understand that anything is possible. And even through their faults, even through their mistakes, even through their shortcomings, we are going to have to be cheerleaders in the rain, in the snow, in the storm, because that's how we build a better nation. Forget, and also being able to stand firm in who we are. You know what I'm saying? I have been doing a lot lately, probably the last 2 years. Um, I've done a lot within my own family, with my children, of developing my ego, because I had an opportunity to sit back and look over some of the decisions that I've made, as a man, and I got to the point to say, you know what, I can't blame nobody else for the outcomes that I have. My ego has to be in check, and I have to sit back and tell myself, look, bruh, you made some mistakes, and the outcome is because of some of the choices you made. You can't blame nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
Stand in your truth, and then say, wherever I am, I'm going to confess my faults. I'm going to open up. I'm going to express I made mistakes. I had to do that with my children, because there are certain things I realized, in the parenting that I received, all that I got wasn't always good. It might have kept me out of jail. It might have kept me out of trouble, but it wasn't always good for my well-being. A lot of it was out of fear. And I had to sit down and had to tell my children, hey, I'm sorry. I'm not perfect. I'm growing with y'all. I may say things that may be hurtful. I may do something that you might not like. Forgive me if I've said something that has hurt your feelings. I've said something that has, hurt your self-esteem. I've had to do that because I don't want my ego to get in the way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I've seen what it's done. I think we all need to do that. I think all of us need to have
that.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if that were the case in all of our homes. You know what I'm saying? I had to tell my son the other day that a lot of things I had to learn by trial and error. You know what I'm saying? Some of the things that we learned, we didn't learn through being coached or being mentored through. Some stuff we made the mistakes, and we spilled the milk, and we had to go back and mop it up ourselves.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then when we try to share that with our children, sometimes they don't grab it as fast as we want them to grab it. And so we'll revert back to some of those tactics that got our attention. But we got to realize these are humans. You know what I'm saying? These are spiritual beings having a human experience. So we got to be more compassionate to our children and the people around us, and stop thinking that because we're the parent, we know it all. That's an ego issue.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So I think we all need to have just those moments, those come to Jesus moments, like they used to say back in the day. Have those moments around the fire and say, hey, bro, I got some chinks in my armor too. But in the same token, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna do the things I need to do in that same ego to strengthen who I am and to become a better person. That's just my take on it, man. I think we got a lot of work to do, but I definitely think it's possible, and we're capable of making that change.
Yep. Well, you dropping the bomb, man. I'm gonna tell you dropping the bomb. I'm gonna give you another one.
It is. Hey, man, we got a lot of work to do, man. I'm telling you, we got a lot of work to do. Our sisters got a lot of work to do. You know what I'm saying? Our teachers got a lot of work to do. Law enforcement across the board, bro. We got a lot of work to do. But I challenge everybody in the chat. I challenge everybody that may watch this, later on tonight or tomorrow. My truck drivers, when you're out on the road, I challenge you, man. Check your ego. You know what I'm saying? Do some study, do some research about your ego. Find out some of the things you were brought up under. Some of those parental guidelines you were brought up under that weren't the best and may have shaped a bad, a misunderstanding in your reality. Think about the society you grew up in. Everybody ain't out to get you. You know what I'm saying? Every man ain't out to hurt you. Every woman ain't out to trying to take your money. You know what I mean? There's all this stuff. We got to go back to the drawing board, in my opinion, in order for us to really, really, really walk in Black excellence. Black excellence takes work, and it takes sacrifice, and it takes putting your ego in check. So I challenge you all, man. Let's do the work. Let's do the work. Let's do what we got to do for our children and for our generations that are coming behind us. That's all. That's just what I got to say, man. Hey, I'm on my soapbox. I've been gone too long.
Hey, appropriately well stated. So that's, hey, I can't follow that. I mean, everything that you just said, everyone needs to take heed to, man. I'm only supporting basically what you just said and what's on that T-shirt right there. What you just espoused right there was Black excellence, and that's how we become excellent. Is peeling off of those layers that are just there because. I mean, why not? You know, that's like what's the Russell Wilson? You know, why not? You know, why not us? Why do we have to be this way? So why not go talk to your kids in a way that your parents did not, or I should say, failed not to? Our parents were great in their own right, and they did what they did based on what resources they had, based on what they learned, and it was a way to progress past their previous generation. But now we have an opportunity to do more. We have to take what we learned from the previous generation, our parents, our uncles, our aunts, our grandparents, and move forward, just like you described. Everything that you just said in your own place with your kids, that's excellence right there. When we decide, let me do something different for the betterment of my family.
Facts. I think that's it, bro. Let's do the work. I'm with you, bro. Saying chopping and chanting and chopping. Listen, let's do the work, man. It ain't easy, bro. It ain't easy, man. It wasn't easy.
The what you call it? The horn. What is it called?
What's that?
What was the horn called? The party horn. What is it?
The sound I make.
Yeah.
Oh, which one you talking about? What I did?
But I got it on lock right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it for both of us on that one.
Okay. Yeah, the Don DeMarco.
Yeah, Don DeMarco. I knew it was some name you called it.
yeah, man. DeMarco, there it is. Yes, sir. That's facts, man.
It's a good way to come out the gate, man. Like I said, those that have been faithfully with us definitely would appreciate it as far as the chatting and giving your input as well. And so we want to make sure that, you know, we're not letting our audience and fans down, but this was a good one to come back out the gate and real talk, man. So I appreciate this conversation.
Absolutely. Shout out to Beautiful. You know, she out there getting that work done, you know, on contract. She's on location, getting to the bag. Let's get the bag. Y'all, you know, like, we got to get to the bag. You know what I mean? So shout out to Beautiful. Thank you for being dedicated and committed to the cause, stepping in for a little while. We appreciate you. Continue to grow and continue to do your best, you know what I'm saying, to set the example for the people around you. We appreciate you. Shout out to all those who found out, you know, about Black and the Bold through our beautiful co-host. And we appreciate you coming through. Brother Cedric, I appreciate you, man. You know, we always give shout out to show love, dude, show us love. So thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Calvin. Thank you, Sister Janae. You know, that's I've been knowing her since she was, shoot, I don't know, probably 11, 12, somewhere up in there. So it's been a long time coming. You know what I mean? Again, Miss Angela Ward, thank you for stopping in. Thank you all so much for all your support. Listen, we need your help getting this podcast out to the masses. We need your help. We need you to share it. We need you to like it. We need for you to talk about it. And we need for you to continuously join the conversation. If you have any you know, maybe suggestions, maybe some topics that you might want to discuss, and we've got a lot of stuff on our board that we're going to be tackling for the you know, the weeks to come. But we want to make sure you're involved, and we want to make sure that if you have a comment or if you want to come on the show and state your claim, listen, you don't have to be on camera, but we definitely want to make sure that you join the conversation. We want to make this a more interactive situation because, you know, sometimes they say I'll be fussing. Sometimes they say I'm too hard. Sometimes they say I'm a misogynist. Sometimes they, Yeah, I mean, people say a whole lot, but when you're on the internet, you gotta have your ego in check so you can keep moving the conversation forward and understanding that everybody has an opinion and they have a right to their opinion. We want to make sure this is an interactive situation. We're not trying to change your mind. We're just trying to have the conversation here at the Black and the Bold. Listen, we get ready to get up out of here, bro. You got anything else to say before we get up out of here tonight?
Oh no, just one thing that crossed my mind when you're talking about basically black excellence in our audience. I do have an experience I just had with one of our classmates. I don't know when the last time you've seen Brother Charles Gloucester.
Oh man, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, so I actually I don't know why it took so long, but I finally actually joined up at his gym a while back, and because he's so busy, I rarely see him, other than out in the community doing great work, promoting the business and supporting other events in the community. But I had a chance to holler at him, inside the gym as well this week. But I thought that was a very special moment because we rarely get to see those that we went to school with. And
Yeah.
again, egos aside and everything, it was just camaraderie. Happy for that brother, doing his thing. He's getting bigger and bigger. I mean, he's swole already, but he's doing a great thing. Yeah, right. He's swole. And so I just want to give that shout out based on, the conversation of ego, basically just saying one brother to the next that, I like what he's doing and I appreciate it. If you have the chance opportunity, definitely go down to Sculpt 24 off of Inner Perimeter Road in Valdosta, across from the Publix shopping center there. That sits in that town center area. But shout out to Charles Gloucester for the week, bro.
Absolutely. Good brother. Very good brother. And I tell you, that brother got more letters behind his name than you can imagine. The brother he's an academic brother. He got a lot of knowledge, but he down to earth and you know what I'm saying? He's funny as all outdoors too. So I'm glad to hear good things about our good brother, man. Thank y'all so much for your support. Listen, I got to say my little speech to get out of here. Listen, we're gonna talk about a little bit about that ego, but I want to give you a little bit of motivation. There's a quote that says, "Sometimes we're tested not to show our weaknesses, but to discover our strengths." I'll say that again. Sometimes we're tested not to show our weaknesses, but to discover our strengths. There's a quote by Gengo Khan, and he says to study. He said to study the Buddha way, is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget self is to perceive oneself as all things. Sometimes when you have struggles in your life, the struggle in your life will many times make you focus on where you are as an individual. And when you begin to really focus on where you are and start building up that person, you will realize that in order for you to come out of that, you have to be selfless. Because your next level is really dependent upon how well and how good and how beneficial you are to the people around you. So I want to challenge you all that the struggle that you're having right now, the weakness that may be revealed, is only an opportunity for you to be strong for the people around you. What am I trying to say? Work on your ego. Because many of the times when you have a struggle in your life, we'll find out where the ego is in your situation. So if we can correct our ego and have that strong ego, have that good self perception, good self-esteem, pride, have that ability to have a real perspective, be able to focus, be able to hone in, and be able to understand I'm nothing by myself, but I'm everything to the people around me. Then at that point, you'll realize just how strong you are. We love you all here at the Black and the Bold. We always want to give you something that you can chew on a little bit until the next time. I want you to remember, regardless of what you're in, your strength lies in how good you can be to the people around you. We love y'all. We'll see y'all next time. And remember, be good to your circle. Your circle will always be good to you. Peace, love, and light. See y'all next week. Same place, same time, same energy. We out. Peace.